hard to do.
Good evening, my viewers. This is George Ondek with the latest edition of the George Ondek Show. I'm very proud to have back tonight Bill Schmidt, ex-councilman from Peekskill. How are you doing, Bill?
Good, George. It's nice to be back here with you. It's always a pleasure to do the show, and I think you to be commended for 14 years of civic service and doing these programs and doing it on your own time and at your own expense and bringing the message of good government to Peekskill and the surrounding area.
Bill, that's interesting you said that, because I'm getting older and forgetful. I thought I was just launching my 13th year tonight, but it's 14 years. And it's interesting that you said at no expense to the taxpayers. I recall, and this is a reunion, you and I were doing a show together called Peekskill Perspectives when you were councilman in Peekskill. And I recently have been doing a show out of Yorktown with Councilman Nick Bianco and usually a Democratic councilman or whoever filled in who wanted to be it. And we discuss issues that happen at the council meetings and what is happening in Yorktown. And that was also at no cost to the taxpayers. How do you feel about that, Bill?
Well, that's the way it should be, and particularly in the current difficult economic climate that we face both locally and nationally, government should be looking in every area that it can to be cutting unnecessary expenditures. And when you see governments spending a lot of money on things like public relations, you really have to question that.
And marketing.
And marketing.
I've noticed in Peekskill recently, I don't know if we've had it before, we hired an economic development manager to promote businesses in Peekskill. I've told you I'm very familiar with Yorktown. They're getting $150 million in new development and retail there, and they don't have an economic development manager. What they have is a Chamber of Commerce president who's very active in the community and helping get businesses locate. And that reminds me of something. When we were doing the Peekskill Perspectives show, we did many shows in the Beach Shopping Center. And I remember a store called Stop and Shop that was just a proposal, but that many local businesses in Peekskill didn't want. How would you say the Stop and Shop has worked out at the Beach Shopping Center?
Oh, I think it's been a great asset to the Beach Shopping Center as well as to the city of Peekskill. I shop there quite a bit.
I do too.
It's a very clean store. It's a high quality store, and they've got good merchandise, reasonable prices for the most part, and it's become a great asset to us. And we are very proud, those of us who were part of that administration, for helping to play a role in bringing it here. And we were, as you know, working on bringing a Target to Peekskill too. And unfortunately, after we left office, that deal fell through. And that was the type of development that I think really would have been a plus for this city.
Bill, that's interesting. The mayor of this town recently did surveys on to see what should be brought into Peekskill, what kind of little stores should be brought into Peekskill. It's interesting you mentioned Target. That was with a big developer near the river, right? I'm a marketing major from college. Let me give her a little free advice. If you brought in a developer like Capelli and put a big store somewhere near the river, and or an office park there, look at the amount of taxes that would save to the people of Peekskill and the volume of business and activity it would bring to the downtown area.
Well,
how do you feel about that, Bill?
There's no question that commercial development plays an extremely vital role in enhancing a community's tax base. And all you have to do, for example, is look at the city of White Plains. White Plains' tax base is overwhelmingly based on office corporate parks, retail development, shopping centers, upscale places like the Westchester, and those developments pay a substantial portion of the city's tax load. And because of that, they're able to keep taxes for residences much more reasonable. We need to go in that same direction. We really don't in Peekskill have a sufficient amount of commercial development to balance out the stress that's currently being placed on the private homeowners here. And consequently, given the fact that this is a community of limited income, most people here are middle to lower middle class. The average per capita income is in the mid 50,000s, which is below average for Westchester County. That makes it extremely important for us to go the extra mile to try to bring quality retail and office development into the city that can balance out that tax load.
Bill, it's interesting what you said, the average salary or income.
Family income.
Family income in Peekskill is. One of the fellows running for president had a view on civil servants, what the definition of it. Mr. Romney, he said, when does a civil servant cease to be a civil servant? And it's when they are getting paid more money than the average person living in a city, and they're getting all of their benefits paid for. And from what I heard from a survey, the average person in City Hall in Peekskill is making $78,000 per year, and with benefits you're talking over $100,000 a year.
Well, actually, you can go online. There are websites, for example, the Empire Center, which is an independent New York think tank based in Albany. They have a website where you can go in and you can find out the salary of every employee of the city of Peekskill, the Peekskill School District, Westchester County, Town of Cortland, Town of Yorktown, any municipality, any state agency, the state legislature, all those salaries are in that website. And if you go in there and you take a look at the salaries that some people are making, they're quite remarkable is the best way to put it. And as you said, that just tells you what the pay scale is. That doesn't factor in what the benefits are with pensions and many other benefits that are added onto that.
And Bill, isn't it interesting? As you know, I'm a proven tax fighter too. 18 years ago, when I ran for mayor of Peekskill, I became up in arms because one school superintendent wanted to raise our taxes 17%. What we need is lower taxes, not more taxes, more services, more expenses. Getting back to a developer, what is the big development that was just built in my old city of Yonkers out on Tuckahoe Road? I think you're familiar with it.
There's a Whole Foods up there, not Rock Hill, it's something, I can't remember the name. I've been there, it's very impressive.
But getting back to that, let me give a little tip to the mayor of our town. A developer built that, and you know what he's built alongside of that at his expense, not at the city's expense? A firehouse, or it's going to be built at the developer's expense. So bring in a developer who will develop either an office, a small office park for Peekskill, maybe a Costco. Well, no, Costco is going to Yorktown. We didn't want it, but lo and behold, Yorktown's going to have a Costco. And I think you may want to discuss what the new firehouse in Peekskill is going to cost the taxpayers.
Well, there's a number of issues with it. Number one, it's going to be built on land that's going to require eminent domain, which is not a good idea.
Right.
Number two, it's going to take a large amount of land off the city's tax rolls.
Right.
Number three, in order to accomplish that, plus to build the firehouse, the current administration is going to significantly increase the amount of debt load that Peekskill taxpayers face, in addition to the debt load that they have already lumped on the backs of taxpayers by purchasing the old dilapidated Carta and L&L sites.
Really? And did they buy them at full market value, Bill, from what you've heard?
From what I've heard is they paid every bit of full market value, and of course now the city will be liable if there's any environmental contamination that's discovered on those properties, which there likely will be because there were criminal charges against those operators for environmental contamination for the many years that they operated there. Now it'll be the city's responsibility to clean that up.
Yes, so not only have we paid a full value for that property, but who now has to pay the cleanup costs if there's a cleanup involvement before the city sells the property.
Look in the mirror, George.
And what was the third point I wanted? Gee, one of the presidential candidates forgot a third point there. But, what about the time we don't have this property, that we're not collecting taxes from it? Why did the city buy it at full property value?
Well, you're asking the wrong person. I certainly wouldn't have.
Especially in this depressed economic times when people are getting certiaries and their property values are going down.
Yes.
And I don't want to say the mayor of Peekskill is vindictive or anything, Bill, but are you a condo or a co-op owner in Peekskill?
I am the vice president of Stonegate Cooperative Apartments.
Does the city pick up your garbage?
No.
Oh, okay, you're lucky. Because Society Hill 2 plus the Woods 3, well, Woods 3 also gets garbage picked up. Won certiaries against the city of Peekskill because we've been overtaxed.
As did we. Stonegate got a tax certiorari too.
So I'm not saying the mayor and his council are vindictive or anything, but lo and behold, they've come out with a scheme now to tax condo owners for garbage at a higher rate than what was agreed upon in their original contract. It doesn't seem very fair, does it?
No, it doesn't. And let me just say this about that. The idea of charging separately for garbage in and of itself is not a bad concept. However, it should be revenue neutral. In other words, if you're charging for garbage, okay, the whole purpose of it should be to promote the environment. So that, in other words, places that are distributing large amounts of garbage above average amounts, those people would pay extra for that. Condo and co-op owners typically distribute a below average amount of garbage because, number one, there are very few children living in co-ops and condos, and the type of services that they use, they do not strain city tax services to the degree that other developments would or private homeowners would. So therefore, if you're going to charge separately for garbage, that should be offset by a reduction in the general tax rate, particularly to developments that are generating less than their fair share of garbage. So it should be at least revenue neutral, or in certain instances it should be revenue rewarding to those places that don't distribute a lot of garbage.
And Bill, you know what? I would suggest at the next city council meeting in Peekskill, all of the condo owners or representatives go there and let the mayor know that we're against this further tax that she wants to put on us. And also let her know in a year and 10 months when she comes parading through the condo developments, promising people that she's for them and the people she's running with, that a month or two later she socks them with a tax that many people who are on fixed incomes could lose their homes in Peekskill. And it's so unfair. But Bill, I'd like to get back to the firehouse. I'm 100% for a new firehouse, but like you said, they want to put it on property that other people own. I hear it's valued at $600,000 or something.
I don't know.
They could move it, I think, a couple of 100 feet away, and there would be no big cost. And another thing, the mayor is an actuary, I believe, so she knows the future value of something. If this firehouse comes in at $20 million, I've heard from 15 to 20 recently, over 30 years with the bonds, we're talking about $40 or $50 million that firehouse is going to cost. How can a town like Mayapack a few years ago built a central firehouse, and it was for like $7 million? And I have a further thing to say, Bill. The firehouse, one of the firehouses is going to be left out. It's going to be left standing on its own. Why is that? I hear they have to spend $250,000 to fix the roof on it, and Mr. Torres, one of our councilmen, is saying the sleeping conditions aren't good enough or unsafe, and they have to make some reconfiguration of the building so it's safe for firemen to sleep in.
Well, these are all very good questions, and I haven't seen many very good answers from the current people who are in charge. And you really have to question what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing, and why there isn't more public input, and why they aren't getting the public involved in a more transparent way. Because I think that there are a lot of other alternatives that should be explored. As you said, we do need a new firehouse.
Yes.
There are problems with the current ones. There's no question about that. I don't think anybody disputes that. But this particular project, at this particular location, at this cost, given all of the problems that you just outlined and which we all know, just does not make a heck of a lot of sense.
And Bill, we have a government channel in Peekskill that it seems like the party that's in power has an unfair advantage over the party that's not in power, because they can be seen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the taxpayer's expense. And if someone's going to run for office in the other party, they don't have the advantage of all the free advertising, the free marketing that's now going on. The mayor's show, which in some other towns I'm hearing that they pay for it themselves, or there's no charge to do a mayor's show. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, that's a very good idea. If that is being done elsewhere, I think that's something that we should look at here, because you're absolutely right. No incumbent should get an unfair advantage. Incumbents have advantages just by virtue of being incumbents, and to enhance those at the expense of the taxpayer just doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I agree with you. And what this mayor has done and the council, I hope the two new people who come on won't agree with everything she proposes. Like, Bill, do you know something's been proposed that's going to cost the taxpayers $4,000 a minute for a 5-minute TV show?
Yes, I had heard about that.
Something about the Discovery Channel promoting Peekskill. We have a professional videographer that we're paying a very good salary, and the mayor and this council gave him a 5-year contract. They don't trust him to do the video, 5-minute video that promotes Peekskill. And you know what? You don't have to spend $20,000. You do the video locally and you put it on YouTube, which is what my show will be on from now on. That's a little plug, by the way. TheGeorgeOndekShow.com will now be seen worldwide on YouTube, Bill.
Oh, that's great.
Any comments on that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. In this current economic climate, to spend $20,000 of taxpayer money on an out-of-town promotion company is another thing that just doesn't make sense to me. And why would you do that? What is the benefit? And even if there is some benefit, does the cost justify it? I have a hard time seeing it, very frankly. If you're going to promote the community, you want to promote it locally, where people within 20 miles of here are already familiar with the area and familiar with the community. Somebody watching this in Bakersfield, California, are they going to say, oh, gee, I've got to rush right over across the country and start investing in Peekskill? I kind of doubt it. It sounds like, to me, like buying a pig in a poke.
I think I agree. And another thing, the mayor's formerly from Yonkers. I'm formerly from Yonkers and very proud of that. But she's brought some ideas up here that I don't particularly like, Bill. An exit tax. I think the only other city in Westchester that has an exit tax is Yonkers and now Peekskill. What do you think about an exit tax if you were going to sell your condominium or co-op?
Well, it's wrong to call it an exit tax, because even if you are not leaving Peekskill and you're just moving from one part of town to another, you're still going to pay it. Basically what it is, it's a sales tax on the sale of your home. And I think it's a particularly outrageous tax, given, again, as we said, the fact that Peekskill has a below average per capita and family income for Westchester County. Most people here are of very modest means. Their home is their biggest investment. In some instances, their home is the equivalent of 80% of their net worth. And for the city to take its grubby hands and grab 1 or 2% of somebody's life savings, which is in their
Oh,
home,
and
just because they're selling their house, that to me is a particularly outrageous tax.
and
It
Bill,
really is.
1 or 2%.
And a very regressive tax.
And Bill, a 1 or 2%, an actuary knows how to use that figure to obfuscate that that's $2,000 or $3,000 on a $200,000 or $300,000.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's another tax. You know another tax they put on us
The
recently?
cell phone tax and the utility tax.
I'm talking about the city of Peekskill.
Yeah, the city of Peekskill is taxing cell phones.
How about a garbage tax where you bring an item to the garbage dump on Saturday now? Now you're going to have to go to City Hall, get a card, a punch card or something that you pay $5, and each time you go down there to drop off an item, you have to pay a fee to the city. Isn't it outrageous?
It's outrageous, and it's also a bad idea environmentally, because the whole purpose of having the drop-off was to encourage people, just like Westchester up in Mohansick Park. You'll notice every year Westchester has the drop-off, that once a year you can bring various recyclables or things that are not recyclable that are environmentally harmful. And the whole purpose of that is to encourage people to dispose of garbage in an environmentally sound way. So now you're going to charge them for it, and that's just going to discourage people from doing that.
And if it's one tax after another tax, and it sounds like this mayor and council have grandiose ideas for Peekskill. They want to make it a San Francisco, it sounds like, or a destination place, but they're asking for very strict enforcement of many of the laws where people are telling on a neighbor if their grass is cut too high. What do you think about that, Bill?
I think if we keep taxing people out of sight, we're going to be more like Camden, New Jersey, and not San Francisco, California.
And Bill, you know a little bit about my history. 18 years ago, when a school superintendent tried to raise our taxes 17%, I started an organization, People for 0% Tax Increases. I was an original Tea Partier, because I went down to the Hudson River with a group of people, and we dumped tea into the Hudson tea bags. And you know what? It's gotten me so mad when I heard this 5.9% that our city manager, who's gone, wanted to raise us this year. I've reformed another group, Coalition of People for Lower Taxes. And I urge my viewers to join me in fighting for lower taxes. I hear our county executive has been doing a very good job on that.
Yes, he has. And by the way, speaking of the former city manager, I want to get back to that very briefly, because he, before he left, made some very shocking statements.
Which were?
Which was that based upon the way this city was borrowing, the way we were spending, and the way we were taxing, that if they don't stop doing what they're doing, the city's headed for bankruptcy.
Really?
And this is the city manager that they brought in. He was their appointee, and he basically told them that they're going in a wrong direction. And I think that that speaks volumes about what's wrong.
And Bill, this is the city manager who resigned positions in 2 or 3 other places before he came to Peekskill.
Yes, he was
and
quite
after
controversial.
After their executive search, in which they're going to probably do another one now, I don't know what that's going to cost the taxpayer, he was the best candidate they could come up with. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I don't think he and the mayor got along very well. There have been rumors in the community that they didn't speak to each other for the last 6 months, but I don't know if that's true. But
well, if you take into account the fact that he told her that they were going to go bankrupt if they keep doing what they're doing, I suppose that explains why she wouldn't want to speak to him.
And, you know, another thing the county executive has done, he's put contracts or proposal for contracts online. I've asked the mayor if she would do that, and she said no. I think everything should be out in the open, even executive sessions where they say they're going to speak on personnel issues and contract issues. I think the contract issues should be public because it's how we're spending our money, and any proposals, so no sweetheart contracts are done in the future.
Well, theoretically, I can understand why you feel the way you do. I wouldn't necessarily want to promote that, and I'll tell you why.
You have a right to differ with me, Bill.
Because when the city is negotiating, the whole purpose of negotiating in private with a particular entity is that another competitor does not gain the inside knowledge of what the negotiation was about. The city needs to strike the best deal that it can, and if it's negotiating in public, it really can't do that. So that's the purpose for executive session. However, your point is absolutely right that once the city does negotiate a successful deal with an outside entity, all of the terms of that deal should be made public
before the contract is signed.
I have no problem with that. Once there's an agreement between the city and that entity, I think the details of that should be made public.
And I think the public should be able to give input at that point.
Before the council votes to approve it, absolutely.
Right. And I don't know, Ms. Paulin, is she a state representative?
Amy Paulin is an assemblywoman.
Okay, I think she passed something recently that public meetings now, what they're going to vote on that night have to be put online. I don't know if you've heard anything about that or not.
I haven't, but in the whole broader context of what you're bringing up,
prior to the meetings.
I think transparency is very important. Open government is very important. You shouldn't have to jump through hula hoops to foil documents, to use the Freedom of Information Act to get public information that should be readily accessible to you. I mean, the use of a FOIL, Freedom of Information request, should be in very limited circumstances for things that are highly confidential, where the city has to do a complete vetting process to determine which portions of documents they can release and which they can't. Normal run-of-the-mill documents you should not have to FOIL for.
Wow. Bill, there's so much to talk about.
We'll have to do it again.
Yes, I would ask you, would you come back from time to time and give your comments on the economy, local politics, maybe even national politics next time? I recently heard also you've been appointed to the Human Rights Commission in the County of Westchester.
Yes, I'm part of the Human Rights Commission now. I was appointed by County Executive Astorino last year, so I've been serving in that capacity for the past several months now.
And I'm sure you'll do a very fine job at that. And the next time I have you on, we'll have to discuss more about human rights and why it's important.
Sure.
And in closing, I can't believe, once again, like before, the time has flown by too quickly, Bill. Do you have anything to say or a contact number where people can contact you, Bill?
Oh, you can reach me. I'm listed in the book, 914-737-7118.
And you're giving everyone your personal phone number. So
it's in the phone book.
Okay.
It's not secret.
And do you have anything in closing to say to my vast audience from Tarrytown to Mahopac, Bill?
Well, I just think that, not just with respect to the city of Peekskill, but throughout this whole region, it's really important that citizens and taxpayers keep a close watch on what's going on in government at all levels, because times are very difficult, and it's absolutely essential that we demand of our elected officials that they extract the maximum amount of savings that they can, that they not spend money where money should not be spent, that they put the interest of the taxpayers first, that they lower taxes as much as possible, that they avoid unnecessary borrowing, and that they look out for people's interest. And unfortunately, that's not always being done.
And at a time when people are being foreclosed on, they're losing their homes, senior citizens are in a very dire strait. It's a time for people to get together, to go to public meetings, let the government know if they're spending their money foolishly too, and to rein in excessive tax hikes. Bill Schmidt, I thank you once again.
George.
This has been George Ondek. I was very proud tonight to have ex-councilman Bill Schmidt from Peekskill on with me. And thanks for launching my 14th year, Bill?
Yes, 1997.
I lost a year or two.
I was your first guest.
Wow, I'm very honored to have you back again, Bill. Thanks again, and tune in to the next edition of the George Ondek Show. We'll be looking forward to seeing you. You were very good, Bill.
Thank you, George. It was a good show.